The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, I've got few confirmations. I'm trying to recap. I would welcome every one of you for the presentation on Patch Tuesday updates. Okay, this is Raja on behalf of Endpoint Management Solutions. I appreciate your time. Okay, I've got few confirmations. All right, so right now we are going to discuss about the updates from Microsoft. All right, here we go. This is a quick 30-minute session. In the next 30 minutes, we are going to explore the patches that are released from Microsoft and critical updates from third-party applications. We are also going to discuss about the impacts on missing these critical patches, at the end of which we'll discuss about how to secure your network proactively. We'll also have a quick questionnaire session. All right, at the end of this 30-minute session, we'll have time to discuss various questions that are raised during the presentation. Okay? So what is in the limelight? Today, in the limelight, there are two things that I would like to insist on. The first news is a positive one, where Microsoft has resumed support for Delta packages. And this is applicable for Windows version 1607 and later versions. So if you were wondering what are these Delta packages, instead of going for cumulative updates, since Microsoft has started releasing updates in a cumulative manner, instead of going for cumulative updates, now Microsoft has stepped out to support Delta packages. So these Delta packages will allow you to update the missing patches of, say, probably once you have done a cumulative update for the month of August, the Delta package is good enough for the subsequent month, which means the next month when you get an update from Microsoft, you need not download the entire cumulative package. Instead, you can actually download just the Delta part. Okay, so the lesser size, the quicker the update. All right, that is the first information that I would like to share. The second one, this is something really critical which we'll have to work it out with. So there is no more support for security and quality patches for computers running on Windows version 1507. Okay, you heard it right. For Windows 10 computers running on version 1507, Microsoft has denied support and further updates. Let's take a quick glance on how it works. This screen will let you know that Windows 10 updates and support details. So version 1507 of Windows 10 was released in the year 2015 in the month of July. And officially, Microsoft has claimed end of support during the May 2017. So you will not be receiving any more critical updates related to Windows 10 version 1507. So how does it impact us? What should we do now? This is time for us to step back and start updating our operating system. In fact, the recent examples of WannaCry, Petya, and a lot of ransomwares have given us enough of knowledge on the significance for patching. So this is time for us. Let's be proactive than being reactive. All right. So let's take a closer look at the patches that are released by Desktop Central. 457 patches were released during the month of August by Desktop Central. We are going to explain this in detail. Let's classify them here. So there are 12 bulletins, 78 patches, 25 updates, 49 vulnerabilities, and 6 impacts. So when I say impact, the 6 impacts are grouped here. All the patches that were released, there were 400 plus patches that were released. As discussed here, 457 patches that were released for the month of August. However, when we term it in terms of impact, the impact seems to be 6, such as denial of service, elevation of privilege, information disclosure, remote code execution, security feature bypass, and spoofing. So these are the common impacts that are left behind whenever you miss a critical or an important patch in your network. Okay, so let's also look at it in terms of severity. So when you classify the patches based on severity, it sounds very simple. It appears very easy for you to understand. We have 22 patches which are highly critical and 20 patches which are important, 6 patches where the priority lays moderate, and 1 patch where the priority is low. So this is how it is being classified. Even though you have 400 plus patches that are released, this is just split or sorted out into easy classification or easy grouping. Say 22 patches with critical severity and 20 patches which are rated as important. So you'll have to ensure that none of your computers in the network misses these patches, critical and important patches in the first place. We never wanted to take the moderate and low patches for granted. However, the severity always signifies with critical and important updates. So these are the applications which are affected. Here is a list of OS and the applications that are affected and released by Microsoft. So Internet Explorer, Microsoft's Edge, Windows. When I say Windows, there are a lot of operating systems in Windows, ranging from Windows 7, Windows 8, 8.1, 10. So Windows, we have brought in as a single category, and then comes Microsoft's SharePoint, SQL Server, Adobe Flash Player, and more. So these are the patches, these are the applications which requires the critical patches. We are going to take every single application and we're going to explore the possibility of the attack, and we're going to identify the main purpose to patch it, the significance of patching here. So when we start exploring Internet Explorer, the severity, we have 3 severities here. The patches released for Internet Explorer, they are grouped into all the 3 severities. Few patches are critical, few moderate patches, and few patches which are rated low. So Microsoft has released patches on all the 3 ratings in terms of Internet Explorer. So which component of Internet Explorer is compromised? We really wanted to explore a bit on which component of the application is being compromised. So immaterial of the component, I'm very sure a browser, when it becomes vulnerable, that could be the gateway for any attacker, any ransomware, or any intruder to creep in through the internet. This could be just one possible gateway where this should be addressed immediately. Okay, so when we discuss in detail about the component, it is Microsoft's browser where JavaScript engine actually fails to handle validations appropriately. So the other component which fails here is user mode code integrity. So the validation which is done for user mode code integrity actually fails, and there is also another problem in memory handling, improper handling of memory. It's more like stack buffer overflow. So these are the possible components which are affected by Internet Explorer. So here is a list of CVEs. You can find a list of CVEs which are released by Microsoft. What could be the possible exploit? We are just trying to come up with the options where what could be the possibilities where this could be exploited. And the first thing that comes into mind is memory corruption. As I explained just a minute ago, this is more like a memory stack buffer overflow. Most of you should be aware of it. Whenever an application tries to store a data in the memory, it consumes the allocated storage limit. In case there is an exception which throws, that data, the excess memory which needs to be consumed, will be stored into a cache or a clipboard. So this is one of the area where attackers exploit this opportunity to corrupt the memory, and of course it doesn't end there. They even step out to execute certain arbitrary codes. In case if they succeed in these executions, they could possibly gain access on the locked on user's privilege. Imagine now what would happen if an administrator is logged in a computer and administrative privilege is compromised. That is endless. The opportunities are endless. So this vulnerability doesn't end here. It starts here, and of course the exploit spreads, from here on, it spreads out. So it is really significant to ensure that your Internet Explorer is patched immediately. Okay, so we are going to discuss on the second application, which is Microsoft Edge. So what components of Microsoft Edge is being targeted here? There's a very huge list. Trust me, Edge this time has a very huge list. It starts from Java's script engines, and it doesn't end there. App container sandbox is being compromised. There are a lot of components within Edge which are compromised. So the severity here for patching these updates, again they are rated into 3 categories, starting from critical, important, and moderate. And here comes a never-ending list of CVEs. A lot of CVEs have been released to address these vulnerabilities. So let us see what could be the possible ways that this could be exploited. So when we discuss on the possibility for exploit, it again starts with memory corruption. So starting from memory corruption, the attacker can even host a specially crafted website. Attacker can also escape a app container sandbox. I'm not sure if you're familiar with app container sandbox. Sandbox is a visual setup where the browsers protect the user's privacy, which means the user's PC is actually protected from the browser, which means anytime an attacker tries to intrude a browser, attack a browser, a sandbox ensures that this attack does not leak to the system. This attack is not carried over to any of the component within the computer except for the browser. What happens when the sandbox is being compromised? which again opens up, a lot of possibilities which could lead to many more attacks or hacks. So when a sandbox is compromised, the user's computer is compromised, to make it more simple. Okay, so you should also ensure that edge is being patched immediately. Anything that comes out with severity critical needs to be patched immediately. So in terms of impact, there are a list of items starting from elevation of privilege. When I say elevation of privilege, when an attacker gains access to a particular user's account, the attacker gains control to elevate his privilege and of course execute a lot of scripts, and that lands up to remote code execution, using which they can start bypassing the security features, and then it leads to information disclosure. So there are too many things that these attacks can actually lead to. Of course, they are alarming, so it's high time that we ensure that our system is safe and up to date. So the third significant thing is Windows operating systems. As said earlier, here is again a huge list of components which are compromised, and of course a list of CVEs too. These components contribute to various operating systems of Windows, be it Windows 7, Windows 8, 8.1, Windows 10, Windows Server OS. So anything related to Windows operating system is highly critical. It's time for us to ensure that we go ahead and get this patched immediately. What are the possible impacts? Denial of service, elevation of privilege, and finally remote code execution. So what happens here? The attacker can target a computer, and one computer, probably a specific computer which is a victim, can become either unresponsive, or permanently the computer's access can be denied. Okay, it starts from there, and of course it moves out to buffer overflow, which is again a stack buffer overflow, memory corruption, and attackers can exploit the user's data, which means obviously they can creep into the network, and there is always a possibility where they can create more vulnerabilities. So the next thing we're going to discuss about the next application is Microsoft SharePoint. Here the severity is important. It's not critical, but it's important, and the impact is spoofing. So here is a CVE number which actually fixes this vulnerability. So what could be the possible ways to exploit this vulnerability? Attacker can send a specially crafted request. The user might not know whether this is an invite or this is an hyperlink or be it a chat message. This will be a specially crafted request in form of a link. In case the user invokes, accepts the link or clicks the link, in that case cross-site scripting attacks can be included. It doesn't end there. From there they start running scripts with the currently logged on user's privilege. The worst case scenario, there is a remote possibility where they can inject malicious content into the browser of the user. So these are the possibilities. So the next one is going to be Microsoft SQL Server 2010. Here again the severity is important, and it's more about information disclosure. So let's see how it impacts the business. The possibility for the exploit could be services improperly enforces permission, which means the permission for a particular service is denied, which shouldn't have been denied. So we say information disclosure, it starts with denial of permissions, and it doesn't end there. There are cases where a person who is not authenticated might have an access to affected SQL database. So when an unauthenticated user creeps in to gain access to SQL database, I am sure you should be aware of the consequences. Next is going to be Adobe Flash Player. So with reference to Flash Player, there's a critical update this time, and the impact would be remote code execution. There are a couple of CVEs which are released to address this scenario. Okay, so the possibility for exploiting this vulnerability. It allows user to execute malicious code. All right, so the attackers can actually execute malicious code, and of course here comes a lot of risk where the data security is compromised, confidential data can be leaked, so it's really vulnerable. We might assume Adobe Flash Player, might be a third party which actually plays a significant role with various other applications. However, this vulnerability is really critical. Whenever we discuss about remote code execution, it is high time that we'll have to go ahead and ensure that they are fixed appropriately. Apart from this, we have a huge list of non-security updates for Microsoft Office. We have a huge list for third-party updates for Windows, and not to deny Mac updates as well. All right, so these are the updates which are released from Microsoft. Okay, so what do we do right now? We have witnessed all the patches, the possible exploits that might happen. So what do we do right now? Here is the offerings. You can find the offerings from ManageEngine. ManageEngine's Desktop Central, which is an integrated desktop and mobile device management software. It takes care of all aspects including patch management, software, remote control, configurations, and more. Patch Manager Plus is an exclusive patch management solution which takes care of patching Windows, Mac, Linux, and third party. We have Desktop Central for service providers too. And the final one is Patch Connect Plus, where this allows you to leverage Microsoft's SCCM in order to patch third-party patches on Windows computers. To make it again more clear, we use Microsoft's SCCM, integrate with that WSUS, and ensure that the patches for third-party applications are pushed using SCCM. So far we have seen all the problems or all the possibilities, related to patches and exploits. Now let us take a quick look on how to get this fixed. So what should we do right here? It's all the more simple. I'm going to take you to the product. What we recommend you to do, if you're not a current user of Desktop Central, what we recommend you to do is just to create an automated patch deployment task. So this is Desktop Central's web console. I'm going to click on Patch Management, and I'm going to choose Automate Patch Deployment on the left pane. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to schedule a task. Schedule a task for Windows. I'm going to choose an option where I can scan the computers, identify the missing patches, download them, and of course deploy them. So this is the option that I'm going to choose. I'm going to choose what applications, what severities, should it be just Microsoft, should I include third-party applications, and what about the severities, should it be critical, important, moderate, or should I just go with security updates, which is just critical? So you can go ahead and choose whatever you wanted to, which includes roll-ups, optional updates, all of them. Okay, so once you're done with that, you can also create an option. You can actually customize your deployment to your own convenience. You can delay the deployment after a specific number of days. Say for instance, a patch is released today, but what happens if the patch misbehaves once it is deployed into production? So Desktop Central has the feasibility where you can create a test group where the patches will be automatically tested on those computers, and after testing, based on the test result, the patches will be automatically updated. They will be approved, and based on the approval status, you can start the deployment. In case you wanted to delay the deployment, you can actually configure a delay interval, which means you can configure a 5 days or 10 business days interval so that you can see to it that the patches don't misbehave and then roll it out to your production environment. So this is something very interesting that we'll have to look into: deployment settings. So this section, deployment settings, allows you to customize your deployment to the core. So let me give you an example. I'm going to create a deployment policy. I'm going to create a new policy for you, a deployment policy. So you can configure when to deploy, how to deploy, and what to do before deployment. You can customize all your requirement here. You can simply create a deployment policy. I'm going to create it as Patch Tuesday. All right. I'm going to specify the time. Should it be deployed on daily basis or monthly basis? If it's going to be weekly basis, yes, I can go ahead and customize it. And when should the deployment happen? I can specify a time interval. Assume it's going to be any time within the 24 hours, I can leave it open, or I want the deployment to happen only during non-business hours. In that case, you can customize it well. You can probably specify a time interval, say at the end of your business hours, around 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the evening, and continue the deployment for the subsequent day. In case the machines are turned off, you can wake the computers before you initiate the deployment. All right. You can also configure notification settings, which will actually be helpful. Every time there is a change in the status of deployment, you will receive emails and alerts. So all you got to do is just to create a deployment policy. What should I do after the deployment? Should I reboot the computer, or should I actually allow the users to reboot it? You can customize all your requirement here. Okay. So once your deployment policy is ready, you can associate the deployment policy to your automated patch deployment task. Here we go. So here's the list of policies that we have created. So you can choose the deployment policy, whichever policy that you wanted to, and you can choose the target. You can choose the target as a remote office, a complete domain, or a specific work group, or based on your departments. Of course, you can well go ahead and do that. So once you select them, you create a task, it's all set. So here we go. You're going to deploy this. You have configured a policy. You have defined a target. Okay, I'm going to make it on daily basis. I'm going to define a specific time interval. Okay, it's going to be every single day. So it is just that one-time process what I'm going to do right here. And once it is done, I need not worry about any updates that are released from Microsoft. I need not worry about the missing patches in my network, because right from detection till deployment, everything is completely automated. Scanning, identifying the missing patches, and of course deployment. Everything is completely automated. Okay, let's head back to the presentation right now. So if you are an existing user of ManageEngine, be it Desktop Central or Patch Manager Plus or Patch Connect Plus or Desktop Central MSP, there is nothing that you have to worry about. You can sit back and relax that all the patches are getting patched automatically by Desktop Central. All right, and now it's time for you to share a few questions. Our experts will be answering your questions simultaneously. We have come to the end of the presentation. Since it's a short duration of 30 minutes, I really appreciate your time. At the end of this presentation, there will be a survey. You can rate us on a scale of 1 to 5, where 5 being the best. We would also love to hear from you. Your feedback is very important to us. Okay, so in case you are looking for more information related to Patch Tuesday updates, you can write them to us so that we can, of course, modulate the presentation and help you serve you better. All right. Thank you for your time. Good day to you.